I'm Chris Zock from the product marketing team at Service Channel. I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, Jonathan Tan, a partner of ours from Taper Solutions who has spent most of his career in the food retail space. He has a deep understanding of the sustainability regulations impacting your business, and he's helped many companies transform to meet them. He's a thought leader on how the grocery industry is uniquely positioned to help drive a more sustainable future for all of society, while becoming more profitable in the process. I'm excited for you to meet him, so I'll let him take it away from here.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Tan, co-founder of Ratio Institute, and I also lead the business consulting services for Taper, and we do project consulting for commercial building owners and especially within the food retail and grocery space. And today we're going to talk about sustainability within food retail, specifically for grocery folks such as those watching this. And we're going to talk about specifically refrigerants. So first, we're going to talk about kind of some of these misconceptions that I think are in the marketplace regarding sustainability. And I think these are now finally starting to come to a head, and people are realizing some of the opportunities that actually are out there regarding sustainability. For a long time, we've talked about sustainability, and there's been this whole thought about being green or greenwashing or making things sound better than maybe what they are. And in some of those instances, more often than not, executives see that as just increasing costs. So people deploying different types of technologies or creating different types of marketing campaigns. And at the end of the day, what it really meant was an increase in costs and operations. So when we're talking about food retail, when we're looking at net incomes between, on average, 1 to maybe 1.5%, you can see how some of those types of activities can be viewed as very negative. And it also gives real sustainability or some of these opportunities around sustainability challenges to be able to deliver on. And so one of the big misconceptions is that there are no cost opportunities. And at the end of the day, when we start talking about saving a dollar, whether it's in energy, gas, food waste, and different types of other operations within the grocery store, we really need to think about what is that actual financial impact to the operator, to you folks that are actually watching this. So one example is for every dollar, as an example, and this was a number that was created by the EPA about 20 years ago, but they stated about for every dollar saved, that's equivalent to about $59 in revenue that had to be generated to offset that same dollar. Now, the reality is that number was probably not exactly accurate, but in general, the story or the thought process was actually correct. And so if you really look at it, it's probably somewhere between $18 and for some retailers, a whopping as much as $83 of revenue that's required for every single dollar that you can save from a sustainable practice. More often than not, we all as an industry talk about energy. And we do that both to our positive side and to our detriment, because in many times we miss some of these other opportunities. There's always gas savings, there's especially maintenance savings, and then of course really food waste reduction. And a lot of these different types of things are tied in. And when we start talking about refrigerants and we start talking about regulation and we start talking about sustainability, all these different things are kind of tied together. And we need to be thinking of these things holistically. So from a misconception perspective, we often look at things very digitally. We look at one only aspect of our store and not actually looking at them as a system, because our stores are these living, breathing, viable systems. So let's talk about refrigerants. For those that don't know, the AIMS Act of 2020 actually, which is from the previous administration, was actually talking about decarbonizing our U.S. economy by 2050. So that's a pretty important thing. And the big component behind that was really this, for those that may have heard this, may have not, but really it was around reducing our average temperatures by 2 degrees Celsius. And that, at the end of the day, was kind of the purpose of those goals. But also baked into that AIMS Act were a couple of different things. Number one, there was a 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions back to 2005 levels. And then when we start talking about refrigeration and refrigerants and grocery, one of the big components of that was an 80% reduction of HFC use by 2036. Now, for some of the people that have been around in the marketplace for a while, and as you can see from my hair, I've been around for a little bit. And for those that are watching this and know me, hello, and hope you're all well. But you guys have done this before. If you remember the ODP, or the ozone depleting refrigerants like R22, many of you have already gone through this, and some of you have even gone through it twice. So if you remember, we converted R22 to R404, and you may have even already started to change R404 to some of these other refrigerants. So these things are already being phased down again, and these are just straight costs, unfortunately, to the retailers, to folks such as you that are watching this. And that's a huge challenge. And if you start looking at what's to come, aside from those higher federal regulations, there are 24 states that are part of the U.S. Climate Alliance, and they're kind of leading the charge when it comes to phasing out of these HFCs. And something to keep in mind is some of these regulations are taking effect as early as January of 2022. And many of them are going to be in place by 2030, so well ahead of the federal requirements of 2036. So I don't want to paint this as doom and gloom, and this is just going to put some of you in a financial pinch, but more as there's these opportunities. And going back to some of those misconceptions about it's just straight costs and being sustainable is more of a painstaking process and a cost process versus a profit driving opportunity. So as many of you already know, the demographics centered around your stores are fairly fixed, but injecting a new remodel into your stores can drive a very significant return. And so when you start looking at the financial aspects and the commercial aspects of your different stores, that's one of the key opportunities as far as looking at for these refrigerant changeouts and how it can impact your business in a positive way. And then the second kind of big component that can be built into that is, where are those efficiencies that you can find to effectively create cash flows that are going to pay for these retrofits? And one of those key components is leveraging things such as the service channel platform. So being able to really understand all of your assets. What do you actually have, not only from a physical perspective and as far as the physical look and feel and merchandise capability of your different assets, but really, what are also those financial components to those assets? How long have they been on your books? Are they fully depreciated? What does it cost you to maintain those different types of things? Are you seeing greater than normal types of usage or repairs that are required? These are key components that often get left out when looking at these different types of, conversions or retrofits. I see often with many retailers that you have folks such as yourselves kind of, pushing the rock uphill and not always in sync and getting the right feedback from some of the merchandising folks, people on the sales side, from the finance teams. And sometimes even if you have construction and engineering teams that are even split, sometimes there's some disconnect there as far as some of the requirements that are being asked during these different types of upgrades. And so being able to really understand and drive those different components from, that asset side is where you're really at, can help drive some of these different opportunities. And then there's very simple things that we utilize all the time at Taper, which is, energy efficiency. Again, we talk about it sometimes too much, but driving out operational costs through your energy use is a huge opportunity. And for many stores, it's not unheard of to actually reduce your total energy spend by as much as 40%. And you say, okay, 40%, what does that mean? Well, an average grocery store, give or take, you're talking about $250,000 in spend in energy. So you're reducing 40%, that's $100,000. And when you start taking into account back to those physical and financial assets, and what is I'm going to use a term that some of you might be, used to, but weighted average cost of capital. What does it cost your company for capital? And being able to build a financial model that kind of drives these opportunities, say, if I can save this much in energy, if I can save this much in waste, if I can save this much in refrigerant leaks and maintenance, And these different types of components, you can actually build a financial model that will show, hey, here's how it'll impact my free cash flow. So when you think of free cash flow from a month-to-month basis, you got positive cash flow, just like at home, right? I have more money coming in than going out. Additionally, you can drive, a real payback. And we're not talking about these paybacks of, oh, I do a project and I expect to get my money back in 2 years. We're talking really the total combined payback associated with that greater event. And presumably, we're talking about a bigger remodel or retrofit. So these are some of those key components about thinking about. And then leveraging the different tools and technologies. So again, not to harp too much on some of the things that the Service Channel has, but there's other plugins that might be able to help, make some of these determinations for you. The different types of IoT solutions that are out there, some of this monitoring and predictive maintenance and these different types of things to drive down your costs as far as operating your stores. And again, creating these dollars out of these operational savings to drive these refrigerant changes. And to give everyone kind of an idea, just in the United States, so we might have some folks here from Canada and others from parts of North America, Mexico, of course, we're talking about $2.5 million to 2.5 to 3.8 trillion dollars is what's estimated to be able to create these gas conversions over the next 15 years, if you want to look at the AIMS Act of 2020, or if you want to use the 2050 number for decarbonization. But that's the amount of money that's going to need to be invested into the marketplace to be able to meet these regulations. And being able to be on the front end and really thinking about this, forward thinking and thinking about the finance implications, how can that impact your business and do it in a positive way? So kind of moved around a little bit. We're going to talk about some real, very just on the ground tactical things, right? Many of you already know, but these are the types of things where you can leverage different solutions. Again, plugging in the Service Channel folks on your asset management, the age of your equipment, the health of the equipment, how it looks. What is your refrigerant charge on a per store basis? What are the different types of refrigerants that you're actually operating? It's not uncommon, even today, for even more modern stores to be operating 2, maybe even 3 different types of refrigerants. So you're going to have to account for those different types of things. What is the value of that equipment that you have, right? How much of it is on the books? Do you own the site? Many grocers have gone different ways over the years. Many own their sites still. Many have sold them off and now lease them. That goes into some of that financial planning. Are you going to still be operating that store in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What is the outlook on that? We talked about the weighted average cost of capital, the WACC. What is that for your particular company? What is your annual energy costs? And what has been the change in energy? For those that follow it very acutely, you probably have seen your energy costs go up as much as 10 to maybe even 15% over the last 24 months. So COVID has impacted, the energy market just as much as it has on some of the other commodities, steel, copper, aluminum, those different types of things. And then your maintenance costs. And then how can you partner with your maintenance providers or with your own people if you have your own in-house people to drive some of those costs down? Again, leveraging some of these technologies to create more of a preventative, instead of a preventative maintenance perspective, more of a predictive maintenance. So now you're getting ahead of some of these challenges. And then being able to put all of that together and really look at it and how can I start driving these types of cash flows and what does that look like? Of course, you can do other types of very simple projects if you haven't already done so, upgrading to LED lighting for your sales floor, operating your medium temp refrigerated equipment with doors. Adding doors reduces the BTU load by as much as 80%. And then if you start talking about that into direct energy, it's anywhere from 60 to 70% reduction. So there's a lot of opportunities to reduce those costs. And then when you do some of these other types of things, they're also going to impact positively other parts of your business. Again, reducing food waste is one big example when you start adding doors to open cases. It's still kind of crazy that, many of us as we were children were in our home, opening up the grocery store and having our parents say, hey, figure out what you want before you open the door. you're wasting all of that energy with that door open. It's always kind of seems strange to me that we've always had these open merchandisers. And it's pretty easy. We're used to these glass stores with frozen food. We had the same challenge when we had the frozen food sections that didn't have doors, and we were worried that customers wouldn't buy. We don't even think about it now. And so that's another huge opportunity to drive some of these cost savings and these opportunities. And as you start reducing your BTU loads, of course, now you can look at when you're doing these major remodels, you can actually have smaller systems, smaller charges of refrigerant. And those will help you, impact those sustainability opportunities and, some of your operational savings and finding these cash flows. And so the last thing I'll kind of leave you with is when you're doing all this type of analysis, now is also the time to really look at other opportunities where you might be able to get different types of funding, whether it's foundational funding, grant funding. Just one example, we were able to help one of our customers up in Washington State actually capture over $500,000 in grants available. And it was really centered around energy conservation and food waste conservation. And so looking for these different types of opportunities, whether they're from the local utility, whether they're from state, federal, and again, some of these grant and foundational kind of opportunities to be able to show and go and say, hey, you know what, we're on the front end of this, and we're really going to be able to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by X metric tons of CO2. And these are some of those great opportunities. And with the plethora of technology and the great amount of people that are now coming into the space with a lot of new ideas and new opportunities and being able to implement them in food retail, these are the types of things that we help our customers with. And it's also really exciting because in our minds, especially on the Ratio Institute side, the grocery store is the nexus of sustainability. When we start thinking about all the inputs that go into these stores, the number of associates that work there, the jobs that are provided, the communities that you serve, these are very, very important aspects of our life. And we've seen with some of these natural disasters over the last couple of years, and of course the pandemic, the grocery store is our place of, our communal space. This is where we come together. And this is where we can really come together as communities, but also give back to each other. And so this is another way for, from a sustainable side, is not only become more profitable, but also give back to your respective communities by reducing your greenhouse gas, emissions. So thank you very much. Again, I'm Jonathan Tan with Taper. Appreciate it to be able to speak to those and be here for Service Channel. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll be talking to you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Jonathan. We really appreciate your passion for supporting the grocery industry. And I'm sure the facilities and operations leaders watching appreciate hearing from someone who's helped guide numerous grocery brands through successful and profitable transitions to sustainable practices. I think your message of how to think holistically about reducing operating costs to fund sustainability initiatives is a powerful one. And we heard some examples like this today from companies like Sam's Club and Tops Market about how they're proactively managing assets, which improves their energy efficiency while also cutting operating expenses and downtime. If you want to hear more about how you can take steps towards more sustainable and compliant facilities, visit servicechannel.com/sustainability. Thank you for joining us here today.